ahead and start at quarterback. Steven.
Yeah, Russell Wilson is by far my favorite play on this slate going against the Minnesota Vikings. We just saw what Kyler Murray did to this secondary. If you didn't see what he did to the secondary, I'll try to give you a visual. He absolutely just picked this secondary apart, threw for 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, rushed for another one, early MVP candidate, no problem. Now they're going to have to go up against Russell Wilson, who really isn't getting a lot of attention so far this season because we're getting all these good performances from other quarterbacks. But this is somebody that already is averaging just under 300 passing yards, 71.1% completion percentage, 26.7 DraftKings fantasy points, and the Vikings don't really offer much of a pass rush, so that means Russell Wilson's going to have all day to throw the ball. And when he's been working with a clean pocket so far this season, 11.8 yards per attempt, 81.6% completion percentage, and 3 of his 6 touchdowns. He, just like Kyler Murray did last week, should be able to pick apart this secondary in what is expected to be one of the highest scoring games on this slate.
Damn, Geoff. Steve is so high on Russell Wilson. Who are you high on?
I mean, I love Russell Wilson, so I'm completely fine with that call. Look, realistically, I think we have about 5 or 6 quarterbacks this week who just look like they're going to be off the charts. It's going to be hard to pick between these guys. I'm going to pick the layup here with Lamar Jackson because Detroit was already banged up in the secondary. They've allowed a 75% completion rate so far, Detroit, to opposing quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson coming off one of the best performances of his career, completed 69% of his passes against the Kansas City Chiefs. And he's running more than he has in the past. He's averaged 14 rush attempts per game so far in 2021. It's a small sample size, but I don't really expect that to go down because of the running back situation with Baltimore. So all things considered, yeah, some people might say, okay, I'm scared here because they're such big underdogs. They're just going to get up and do nothing. That's not really what Baltimore does. They just keep running the ball, and Lamar is basically one of their main running backs. So I think the potential here for just a monster game, we're talking like almost the double bonus, is definitely on the table. And I think at under 8K, Lamar Jackson probably grades out as a favorite for me.
All right, he landed on the injury report for the 4th time in his career yesterday,
it's
though,
a
Geoff.
stomach bug.
Okay, all right, man. Hey, he did. Hey, I will give you this. He cleared that massive hurdle by finally beating Patrick Mahomes last week.
I'm glad there's a red question mark beside Lamar Jackson because it'll probably just mean lower ownership. So.
All right, dude. Awesome. Good for you. I hope it works out. Talk to me about running back here, Geoff.
I'm going to roll the dice a little bit more here, and I'm going to go with Jonathan Taylor. Really rough start to the season with Jonathan Taylor, 3.3 yards per carry. Under 7K, though, in price now. This is kind of like the buy low spot. Look, he's playing Tennessee. 34 points allowed per game. Yeah, a lot of it's coming against the pass. We want to attack the secondary. They're not exactly great against the run either here. Indy's idea early in the game here is going to be to get Jonathan Taylor the ball, because if they get him going, it means Jacob Eason and maybe Brett Hundley has to throw less. I think that the opportunities have been there for Jonathan Taylor. He leads the league in red zone touches so far. He just hasn't got it in the end zone. Eventually that dam is going to break. He's also seeing more passes, set a career high in targets in week 1. I think Jonathan Taylor is a good buy low target here, especially in the big fields.
Okay, what about you, Steven? Which running back do you have your eye on?
I really like Austin Ekeler this week going up against the Chiefs. Dating back since 2018, he's done very well against his team. He's averaged 20.3 DraftKings fantasy points against the Chiefs throughout his career, and he's handling 20.8% of the red zone opportunities. Now, the Chargers are underdogs in this game, and that plays right into what Ekeler does best, and that's catching out of the backfield. He caught all 9 of his targets last week, should be able to do that once again against a vulnerable Chiefs run defense. They've already allowed 116 plus rushing yards to opposing running backs and 4 rushing touchdowns against the Browns and the Ravens. So if Ekeler is going to be busy coming out of the backfield, if he's going to continue to handle those red zone opportunities, I'll absolutely take him at a very reasonable price at 7,200 this week. There's a lot of good running backs on this slate. Don't get me wrong, but I think Ekeler is going to be someone that isn't going to be overly popular, but I think he's in a really good matchup against the Chiefs.
Yeah, man, that matchup has the makings of a high-scoring affair, too, on Sunday. Should be a sexy, sexy Sunday showdown. What about at wide receiver, Steve? Which dude stands out to you?
Yeah, I'm going to be pairing Russell Wilson with Tyler Lockett. It's always hard to figure out which receiver from the Seahawks you want to take with Russell Wilson, but Lockett, at least in the early going, has been that guy, and he probably has one of the best wide receiver cornerback matchups of the week, going against Bashaud Breeland, who was formerly with the Chiefs, and now he's making a really bad impression with the Vikings. He's already been targeted against 12 times, has allowed 9 receptions for 155 yards, which is an average of 17.2 yards per reception. Opposing wide receivers have also scored on him 3 times already this season. We're only in week 3. That leads the league. What's he doing? Is he still with the Chiefs and just doesn't realize? I don't understand. What's he doing to the Vikings? He's trying to destroy them from the inside. I have no idea. But even if that's the case or not, that means Tyler Lockett's in a great spot this week, 7,400. I mentioned how high this total is. There should be plenty of opportunities for Lockett this week.
Okay, Geoff, what about you, man? You got a little contrarian stack with Lamar Jackson, or do you want to go elsewhere?
I mean, I definitely do not mind pairing Lamar Jackson with Marquise Brown, since you brought it up. But you mentioned the sexy matchups on this slate, Emerson, and I agree with Steve. I don't think there's anything sexier for fantasy than Seattle versus Minnesota this week. These two defenses are terrible. They are bad. Look, Seattle just got run over last week, but I like attacking them through the air here. Everyone's going to be on Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook is seriously questionable. He's actually dealing with a real injury to the ankles. Go to Justin Jefferson here. Justin Jefferson still averaging far more depth per target than Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen has just found the end zone a couple more times, so he's had the hot start. Jefferson is leading the team in targets with 19. This is going to be a back-and-forth game. If Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett go off, which I think Steve is absolutely correct in saying they're about to, Justin Jefferson is going to go off on the other side because the Seattle secondary can't cover players like Justin Jefferson. So I think this is a great buy low spot on a player who's just started out. He hasn't even been that bad. He scored a touchdown last week, but no one's going to play him because everybody on this field is going to look at Dalvin Cook and say, well, we're just going to get another big game out of a running back against Seattle. I think the Seattle rush defense could actually bounce back here. Dalvin Cook's not healthy. Go to Justin Jefferson. Going to be super low owned in a great matchup.
Yeah, man. On the DK Sportsbook, I'm looking at it now. Seahawks, Vikings tied with Bucks and Rams for highest total on the slate, 55. So that shows you what odds makers think high scoring game could be on the docket. Tight end, a top-heavy position here once again this season. So, Geoff, who do you target here? Whose price do you like?
This is probably my favorite play of the week. I don't understand why people aren't willing to trust TJ Hockenson. I really thought he would be like the highest-owned player at this position, but he's really not projecting to be. 5,200. He's averaging 10 targets a game. Look, I know it's Detroit and Jared Goff. Jared Goff is throwing the ball a lot, 46.5 pass attempts. This story isn't going to change. Detroit's defense isn't getting better. They're more banged up than they were last week, and they're taking on the Ravens. Teams throw a lot against the Ravens, too, because they're always behind. Look, there's really nothing bad about this matchup. Detroit's playing at the 5th fastest place in the league. Baltimore's allowed the most receptions to opposing tight ends. Well, I'm not sure why people don't want to buy in here with TJ Hockenson at 5,200, but I really like playing Lamar Jackson. Maybe you throw in Marquise Brown, too. Then you come back with TJ Hockenson. He's too cheap, and I don't think the field is going to be heavy on him at all.
No, he's got back-to-back games with 8 grabs. Steve, who's your tight end this week?
Yeah, I'm going back to, one of the chalk plays that busted last week, and Tyler Higbee. You are not going to run against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It just doesn't happen. And you look at the numbers, and it backs that up. They faced a 74% pass rate by opponents. That's the most in the league. So now you have someone like Higbee going against the Buccaneers, who is going to be very involved in this offense. And the Buccaneers have been okay against the tight end through 2 weeks. 16 receptions allowed, 153 yards. They haven't allowed a touchdown as of yet, but I think Higbee's going to be busy this week. The ownership is going to be down because he didn't exactly do well in what was supposed to be a good matchup for him last week. But with the way that the Rams are not going to be able to run in this game, they're going to have to resort to the pass. This is a very close game, as close to a pick'em as it was this morning. So I think there's going to be a lot of passing in this game. And I think Higbee's going to be one of the better, cheaper options on a position that is very top-heavy, like you mentioned.
All right, good stuff, man. Before we wrap up this segment, though, yes, I do agree with you, and I support you, Steven. About last night, Christian McCaffrey here, dudes, leaving the Panthers win over the Texans with a hamstring injury. People on Twitter were very fired up about it. Trust me on that. It was Chuba Hubbard or Chuba Hubbard and Royce Freeman who filled the role. But not that effectively. So can you break down, please, for us, the fantasy impact of McCaffrey missing time for Carolina, Geoff?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure everyone was very complimentary, just giving Christian McCaffrey like shout outs and stuff. I'm sure that's all it was on Twitter. But as far as what you want to look at here going forward, yeah, Hubert looked overwhelmed. I mean, let's just be dead honest. I think Carolina was giving him touches because they were playing the Texans and Davis Mills, and they didn't really care at that point. But I think when you're going forward, Royce Freeman is the guy who can step in here. He was an every down back in Oregon when he was in college. He handled a massive workload. He has the capabilities to stand in, be a good pass catcher, and he's not Christian McCaffrey. He's not gonna get you like 5 yards per carry, but he'll definitely grind it out. He's not gonna make those mistakes that Hubert made. So I'd really actually look to Royce Freeman here going forward if McCaffrey misses a significant amount of time.
Okay, what's the fantasy outlook for both of these potential fill-ins, Steve?
Well, first and foremost, when the injury occurred, I thought McCaffrey was doing a little like swag jump there. So I was surprised that was actually an injury. I thought he was like just
I agree.
smooth.
That was a lot like
Right.
the old school like Fred Taylor. You kind of wait, a little hop, and then you hit the hole, baby.
So when he was hurt, I was like, oh, that wasn't on purpose. That was actually unfortunate. And, you know, it's really unfortunate for the Panthers that they don't have Mike Davis anymore. He was an absolute monster in that role for the Panthers last year. They don't have that anymore. And if anything is an indication from what we saw last night, Hubbard does not catch the ball well. I know it was a very, very small sample, but that really was a big thing for me. I agree with Geoff. I think Freeman's going to be the better option in this backfield. We know, obviously, you can't really judge on that half of game that we saw from both of them, but I was not really overly impressed from what I saw from Hubbard. Wasn't a big pass catcher at Oklahoma State in his 3 years with them. So I think Freeman could end up being that guy. Hopefully it's not anything too extreme for McCaffrey. If it's a grade 1 strain, he might miss about 1 to 3 weeks. Anything worse from that, you're talking about potentially half a season. So really hoping for that grade 1 strain. But yeah, the Panthers, without Mike Davis, they look like a very vulnerable team at that position this season.
I think Freeman's got a lot of Mike Davis in him. That's not necessarily a compliment, but it does kind of tell you where the usage is probably going to go.
Yeah, dude, break the glass, send up the smoke signals, pop the flares, call in the military because we are now at DEFCON 1 with Christian McCaffrey going down.